Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I want to give you a follow-up video on the starter build video that I put out just before Betrayal League, just to let you know how some of these starters are going, and the one specifically that I chose, which is the champion with the new steel skills setup. Now, from what I've heard with the other starters so far, they're all going pretty well. The people that have figured out Ice Spear totems are saying they're pretty good for the single target, and they've got a nice spread, and they're rather reliable and safe. And if you don't like that, Arc totems is still always very, very reliable and a way to go. Deadeye with the Ice Scourge arrow sort of thing, or Rain of Arrows is going pretty smooth, and as a bow starter that is somewhat surprising as always, but you know, it's getting you going. And of course, Chieftain Melee with Consecrated Path or Tectonic Slam has apparently been going rather well too, which should be expected. It's a very basic and easy to start sort of setup, whereas this Champion Impale steel skill thing, it's a bit of a struggle, let's be real. The steel skills themselves are just kind of weird. They are a bit meh, they don't particularly clear very well, and they do require some rather decent setups to actually do anything. Like, I, for example, haven't personally found it to be that bad that I have to quit and start again, but I definitely had a few little growing pains here or there with the build where it just didn't feel very good. The clear was a bit awkward, and the damage was just weird to figure out how to do good amounts of it. So I do swap between Shattering Steel and Lancing Steel quite often. At this point, I am just simply using both skills and using them situationally on different maps. Maps that are a lot more closed off and have rooms and doorways and all of that, Shattering Steel seems to do a lot better on, whereas maps that are a bit more open and linear, your Lancing Steel can actually do alright on. And in the end, I did have to get some Hemophilia gloves to feel better about my clear speed, or about the pops, the explosions. And once I got Terminus Est onto this character, it actually started to feel like it had respectable damage and clear. Whereas as a pure starter character with no gear, running around with shit weapons and all that, it felt pretty damn bad trying to do damage, and upgrading your character with links and all of that did help a lot. So once you get like 4 links, 5 links, that's when you start to feel good, because you can start running GMP, so Greater Multiple Projectiles, which is for the most part seemingly very worth it for both skills. You then want some form of Pierce or Chain or Fork, so we've been experimenting with all of those, and in the end currently I'm running Pierce on both skills, though I think Chain is a very good alternative once you have decent enough damage. Chain won't feel good if you don't have good damage, so you really can't use it early on, you can't use it for quite a while, but ultimately I think the Impale stuff is falling just a bit short. As a pure physical sort of mechanic, you're trying to stack a bit more physical damage and get some sort of physical Impale stuff going. Ultimately, the skills aren't that mechanically bad, but just pure physical still is not in a great place to exist, I think. So I think ultimately you're going to be getting the most bang for your buck out of these skills by ignoring the fuck out of Impale and building, let's say, a Deadeye through the chain mechanic, through the chain ascendancy and mechanic, and then going something like cold damage stacking, Herald of Ice, and just exploding shit really quickly with lots of attack speed, lots of chains, and just feeling good about the skill, ignoring the Impale altogether. Because mechanically I don't think they're too bad, and once you get enough attack speed, enough damage, you can start to feel pretty good about your skill, and the best way to do that would probably be elemental damage and ignoring the Impale shit. So I want to go over the character a bit with the steel skills and all that. The immense amount of shit I have going on here is all from the new mystery boxes, by the way. It's pretty full on. But what I wanted to show you and talk about was the Impale skills. So we have Lancing Steel, that's the one that shoots in kind of a line. And then you have Shattering Steel, that just replacing 1-for-1 basically in the exact same setup, works just fine, and looks something like that, shattering out a bunch of extra little projectiles, and it is very much, can be described rather, as a melee or sort of physical attack-based ethereal knives. But for the most part, I've been trying to get Lancing Steel to work. I like it a bit more thematically, but overall, Shattering Steel is probably the more viable type of actual attack skill in these Impale and Bleed explosion type of mechanics. So Lancing Steel is one I've been trying, but it is pretty clumsy. It's fairly awkward. When you attack close to you, the projectiles will spread out more. When you attack further away, the projectiles center in more. And the idea is for against a single target, especially a boss, for example, to get as many projectiles to hit them as possible, because each projectile that hits will do damage. So it does do additional shotgunning in that case, and it does make for a pretty weird playstyle against a lot of bosses where you have to stand right next to them because we do have point blank, but you're like clicking further away, and then that really locks you down for your movement, because to then move you have to like go mouse all the way over to the other side of the screen, and it just feels kind of shit. Whereas with Shattering Steel, when you're going in for boss fights and just mechanics to maximize your DPS, you basically just click right next to you and face tank an enemy. If you're going to face tank, that seems to be the best DPS scenario for the skill, at least the way I've played it. So currently my links for Lancing Steel, I bought a 6-link here for about 20C, just a white 6-link, rolled it. You got Lancing Steel, greater multiple projectiles, vicious proj, and then running Pierce as my utility support, brutality, and then maim was my 6th link. The skills both start to feel a lot better once you have greater multiple projectiles and some sort of utility. So here I went Pierce, but I do play around with Chain every so often for some big open maps. Chain feels okay, but it is a pretty hefty reduction in damage. So if you're going to run Chain, the Deadeye really does feel like it's going to be the best source of Chain. Otherwise, once you get a Terminus Est on at level 51, the damage does start to feel pretty good, or a couple of good weapons in dual wield, because as I mentioned, it's a very flexible build. The only 2-hand skills I have here are these 2 passives, and then these passives. You could very easily dual wield with like a Scaver and some other offhand, and get very good results as well, and go pretty fast. Now, as far as our ascendancies are concerned, I did grab Master of Metal to start with, so that's my normal ascendancy, and it felt okay, not that noticeable, but yeah, it gave us a bit of extra damage. Once I got Cruel, I unspec'd that and went into Worthy Foe, and then for Merklab, I went back into Master of Metal, and for Uberlab, I'm probably taking Unstoppable Hero, just for the armor and evasion, while having Fortify it should be pretty useful, but you can easily make an argument for Inspirational, or First to Strike, Last to Fall. I'd say the last points should be entirely up to you out of all of those, and I'm probably going to take Unstoppable Hero. Passive tree is as it should be, as I showed you guys, pretty straightforward. I did end up taking all the frenzy charges on the tree, simply because I'm running Terminus Est, and that gives me frenzy charges all of the time. But the only other real thing to mention of the gear, which is pretty fucking basic, is that hemophilias do help quite a lot for your feel of the skill and your clear speed. Once you get these, you will feel that you take on packs just a little bit better, and even the bleed damage will be somewhat respectable against some enemies out there. Overall, these skills I think will get from me, let's say, a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. Points for trying, they're kind of, different and based around some new mechanic, but overall falling a bit flat at the moment. At least on day 2 or 3 of the league, maybe we'll figure them out a bit better in the future with better gear and just mechanically understand what to do with them. But plenty of other things like Stormbrand, Armageddon Brand, New Ice Spear, Winter Orb, all of that shit apparently is amazing. So go out and try all the new stuff there because it is working for people very well. And as well as that, the banners are actually pretty decent. Basically treat them as a Vile Haste that you have to build up souls on and then press whenever you have souls. So in my current version, I'm running War Banner, but I think you can go either way. This one gives me a bit of adrenaline when I place it for 2.5 seconds. So you run around, build up enough souls or stacks for your banner, put it down during a heavy encounter or a boss fight like so, and you get the buff inside the circle. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just a nice handy buff against bosses, and I think it does go pretty nicely with these melee type builds. And as well as that, I am using Vile Double Strike for additional single target. Recommend you do the same. It definitely helps your single target quite a bit. That'll be it from me though for this current little update. I'm still probably going to play a little bit of this, but I am keen to start something else as well and try out potentially Ice Spear Totems, because that's the biggest question mark of a build that I have out of the ones I gave you. For now though guys, hope you enjoyed the little video. Hope your Betrayal League is going amazing. RNG be with you and all of that. And I will see you next time. God damn it. Fuck. I've been working this case a long time. Been after these so-called syndicate for years. I have no idea how they were doing it, but they were infiltrating top-level gaming corporations. Shortly after, game would die. They'd then disappear without a trace, move on to the next target. They made their first mistake, though, when they decided to work with the Sweaty Frog family. These guys had no control, go around town bragging about being in the syndicate. So I started tailing this one guy, Papega. He was erratic, unpredictable. Figured I could get some strong intel out of him as he'd slip up eventually. Talked to him undercover a few times, even. Turns out, just a retard. There was hope, though. There was hope. Through him, I managed to get to his cousin. Call him H. He was the reason I finally got to piece together what was going on over there. Guy was real skittish, scared. I could hardly stop him from talking. Barely even threatened him. Told me everything. So what they do is they get into these game companies, make it in as developers and tank the games from the inside. They're real idealistic type. They believe kids should be outside playing games, with each other, real life. The only way they think they can stop the gaming juggernaut at this point is to make sure the games just plain suck. Of course, we all know better. It's a fucking waste of time. People still happily play shit games. I mean, look at World of Warcraft. Years ago, they go into Path of Exile. They tried to ruin it by convincing the team nerfs were a good idea. Down went Cast On Crit. Down went Valpact, Energy Shield, decisive blows. But it didn't matter. Game was too strong, had too loyal a following. I mean, it's free to play, yet some of these suckers spend thousands of dollars on cosmetic hats. There was no winning that fight, so they moved on to Diablo 3. The strategy was simple. Convince the other developers to, do nothing. Week after week, year after year, the game stagnated, and what little crumbs they did give players barely did anything. Games were frustrated. Gamers were frustrated and banked all their hope in the next big announcement. That's where the syndicate really came into play. Somehow they sold the idea that mobile gaming was the winning play and what everyone wanted. When that idea hit the public, it was all over. One of our favorite franchises dead. No one knew it could happen. That's why it must be stopped, because they've set their sights on Path of Exile again, coming to finish the job. It's at this time we won't have one of our top men to help defend it. Called him No Life. And he did all he could to keep this game afloat. Hell, he's the only reason I'm here today, trying to take these bastards down. They got to him, took out his partner, the Katarian. Then they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, gave him all the security he ever wanted, just so he'd stay away from Path of Exile, and that's how he became the Salt Baron. Put one of their top managers on him 24/7 to make sure he'd stay in line. We lost a valuable enforcer that day. So that brings us here to today. I've been beating up Piety, hopes she can give me more info on how they're planning to take PoE down. So far she's only given up her boss, the false god, but I know this goes way higher and way deeper. And if I just knew who was pulling all these strings, I feel like we'd stand a chance. Alright, so I like the Papega and the Monk Age. Look at them. Let me move this shit back. Let me go turn on the cable, I think.